Well, good evening, everyone. I am John O'Loughlin, and welcome once again to my channel. It's called McDuff_2020, and seated to my left and your right is none other than George Webb, investigative journalist. And on Skype, which I will join in just a moment, is Professor Daryl Hamamoto for another of our Thursday trios. Tonight, we're broadcasting from Mystery Island, Charette. So a little bit different setup tonight. But I'm glad to say I've got a great connection with Professor Hamamoto. So without further ado, let's bring Professor up. And how are you tonight, Professor?
I'm doing very well, John. How are you doing, George? How are you doing, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the live chat.
Yeah, we're excited to have you here. John O'Loughlin gave out 14 copies of Servitors of Empire tonight, and we're going to do a little trivia game that we're all reading the book right now. And we know you're writing a new book. Can you tell us a little bit about the new book?
Yeah, I started doing daily live chats on YouTube beginning Christmas Eve, December 24th, and I've been doing one a day up until today. And then I'll be going on a 2-a-week schedule, which will allow me to have some writing time. And what I'm doing, inspired by your researchers, researching and reportage in the Washington, D.C. area, I'm going to be doing something on contemporary occult Washington, D.C. And over the past 3 days, including the day prior to the President Donald Trump speech at the Ellipse, I was talking about the very occultic layout and infrastructure of the Ellipse itself that goes back to this sacred geometry, if you will. And I won't say I predicted, but I said that the gathering at the Ellipse, and I gathered a bunch of material from the U.S. Library of Congress, including sketches that go back to the 1850s, and as they were laying out the Capitol Mall and everything. But I said that his meeting there and assembling all those millions of people, multitudes of Americans, with all that energy, that live energy that they're bringing, I said this has occult ritual implications. And if you look back into our history, including the very laying of the cornerstone of the Capitol building, all those principles are there. The difference is that whereas it was fairly well accepted and widely dispersed knowledge back then, today in our hyper-rationalistic age, where we're only guided by algorithms and radical empiricism and what we can touch and feel, we lost connection with these metaphysical roots of the American Republic. So part of my agenda is to bring them back in a positive, pro-human way instead of the way it's been going for the past, listening to John, I think it goes back to 1947, right? It's been going on for decades. The dark side of the metaphysical tradition has been holding us hostage. So I want to bring back the balance. And I believe that President Donald J. Trump, the commander-in-chief, is the harbinger of this epochal change. And that is the reason why he has met with such great resistance, not just for the base criminal activity that he would threaten to uncover. No, he represents a larger metaphysical change that puts these other people who have been in control since 1947, effectively, it puts them on the sidelines, and it brings the American people and the American Republic, it puts us front and center.
Well, we've got our role to play, though. Are we going to do our bit? We, as the American people, it's like the chorus in the play, right? You're
Yes.
hoping that the chorus stands up when they're supposed to and sings the song they're supposed to sing. And I think our chorus has been very violently divided by tactics that come from the same dark side of reality, the tactics of psychological manipulation, which is the story since, as you say, 1947, when the National Security Act enabled Allen Dulles and his brand new CIA to impose psychological operations all around the world, which, we really didn't have any problem with that, but he also did it at home. And this is where we're at right now, is that all of his planning, all of his, setting us up are now being played, because we are being played by the folks that run these operations. And nothing can symbolize it better for me than the pictures of a man who's been identified as a agent provocateur, Antifa, and his name is all over the internet now. But he's the guy that wore the bull, that buffalo helmet with the horns coming out of it, and went up and stood at the roster of the Speaker of the House in the People's House, right there where the most sacred place in democracy is the House of Representatives. That is the People's House. And he went in there, yes, and with a ritualistic type of outfit on to kind of take possession. And I think that's what they were trying to portray, was that, hey, we own this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
it was all over again.
I'll just throw in here, and I of course saw the pictures of the guy that you're speaking of, John, with the horns and everything. And we have a video of him, of Dave and Tara down by the ellipse interviewing him before he made the trek up to the Capitol. And he was very instrumental in getting those people to leave Donald Trump's speech before Donald Trump was finished. And this is the big secret that people don't realize, is that they used this symbology and this kind of ritualistic, sort of herd mentality to draw these people away from Donald Trump, because he was going to, there was comments that Trump was going to walk with everyone up to, sort of a Joe Biden walk in reverse.
Right.
And to reverse the election. And
I had forgotten about that.
Yeah. Trump had talked about it, but Trump saw the crowd moving, and there was all these provocateurs in the crowd saying, let's march on the Capitol, let's stop the steal and all that. And when I saw the pictures, of course I took video. I was there when the orange caps, the orange knit hats I was right there amongst them when they did the barricade, and I was right there with the shooting. I heard the shots of the shot of the girl, and I was about 100 yards, and I went up the stairs, and I was able to see the people coming out from the shooting of the Ashley Babbitt. And I saw the pictures later and the videos inside, and it's a totally different made-up world. I almost burst out laughing when I saw the picture of that guy. It was such a staged photo, but it was so symbolic, and everything there was, placed in symbology. And the world they created inside had nothing to do with the world outside. They were going to tell this story of wacky Q people and other weird oddities doing horrible things inside, turning, dumping Nancy Pelosi's paper clips on the floor. And it had nothing to do with the very peaceful folks outside. So I've committed myself to just doing these 1 minute and 2 minute interviews of people who were actually there and not a part of this school play on the inside. But I think what you're saying, I saw writ large. I saw in play and used very effectively to tell a 180-degree false narrative, but it worked.
I will offer everybody a name to investigate if you haven't before. His name is James Hoban, Hoban. James Hoban was the architect for early Washington. He was famously a Freemason. And it took me a while to figure it out. And then it dawned on me, wait a minute. The thing that's weird about this is James Hoban. That's an Irish name. This man's a Catholic. But he's setting up these Freemasonic symbols in Washington, D.C., with Lafayette and with L'Enfant and the rest of the people that contributed to the architecture of the city. But James Hoban is an example of, at the time of our founding, the Jesuits, were also founding Georgetown University. And they were taking the mantle of education in Washington, D.C., and surrounding Maryland too, but specifically to educate people. They had the the knowledge. They'd been to their colleges in France and Douai and all of the famous Jesuit schools. So they were smart and they had the knowledge, and they spent that knowledge educating the American people in their own way through schools like Georgetown in Washington, D.C. And James Hoban was simultaneously a Freemason and a Catholic. And that was not ever done in the 19th century. This is
Right.
the late 18th century. And it was a kind of a marriage of convenience between the Anglican Church, the Church of England, which was also building in Washington, and the Catholics, and they worked very well together at the time because they had a common mission, which was to build the capital of the United States in the image that they chose. And isn't it interesting that the Anglicans and the Catholics of Georgetown, which is the Jesuits, the Anglicans and the Jesuits worked together and invested in projects such as building churches. They would help each other finance each other's churches, for instance. It was all about building a civilization here in Washington, D.C. that was in the image of the Freemasons and the Jesuits. And to see that was working together as everything else was going on in the late 18th century, it just shocks me. I had no clue that I would find that. And when I found it out, I said, wow, that explains a lot. Explains a lot. The Jesuits and the High Church Anglicans working together to create a national city.
Yeah, and I was told earlier this evening that if you can't be a Freemason if you're a Catholic, but you can be a Knight of Columbus. So that their waypoint or meeting point, I guess, a secret society, little meeting bridge is the Knight of Columbus, I guess.
Yeah, the Knights of Columbus were an invention of the 1880s and 90s, which was just a way to have some rank and file guys that were working for you. You know, if you needed some funds, they'd sell a Mustang or something, and they still do.
Yeah.
Well, John, as you explained his history, and that's news to me as well, the cooperation between the Anglican Church and the Catholic Church, because we were always taught that they were at odds with each other, to put it lightly. But what it reminds me of is one of George Webb's phrases, which I'll adapt to for this purpose. It was nothing less than an ecclesiastical hair-pulling contest.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, well, you know, Doctor, I thought of a lot of the Webbisms, and one of them was school play. I mean, that one just kept. You know, it's amazing how the nation, you know, listening in this room here with 14 people now, we get our Charettes are getting much bigger, and listening last night to our senators describe a world which is a bizarro world. It had nothing to do with anything that happened outside the Capitol. And, you know, 1 million people, or some people say 2 million, but 1 million people came here, all peaceful, all races, all religions, all ages. No room for that. But for the few crisis actors that got in there, inside, it was all about their lives were in danger, right? Kelly Loeffler, senator from Georgia, was going to throw away all concerns of the thrown election that I saw her in person talk about on the campaign trail in Georgia. Now it was all going to be about the safety of our democracy. Democracy came within a breath of being extinguished, the candle of our republic. And these people are saying these things out loud, and they're serious. That this motley crew that kind of did like a Village People, you know, ad hoc dance, which was so contrived, was believed by the American people that this is really what happened in Washington. We were getting calls from people in Washington. Are you okay? And we're like, what do you mean? We're standing outside. We're all peaceably assembled and we're talking away. Even Kelly McInerney was talking about the violence that we saw yesterday should never be. Get out of your basement. walk down to the end of Pennsylvania Avenue and check out the people. The people were very peaceably assembled.
Oh, yeah.
If it wouldn't have been for the 50 orange hats, Doctor, if you could have seen these people with neck, sleeve tattoos and all kinds of piercings, these aren't Trump people. And
You called it today.
They all put the hats on, and then they went right through that barricade.
Well, your camera angle was from behind them, but you could see that most of them were like wearing hoodies and had a lot of their selves kind of covered up the way the Antifas do.
And masks. And masks.
Yeah.
And I came down Pennsylvania Avenue with Addie. We were coming down to see Ann Vandersteel, and we saw the whole thing assemble with everybody coming right around the OAN studios. I think that's Louisiana Avenue there where it tees into Independence Avenue. All coming across. They assembled on that little grassy knoll area. They all reached in their pockets, pulled out these orange pull knit caps, and then, man, not 1 second, straight to that barricade. And, people were calling it the bicycle barricades. There was no barricade. I mean, a child could push these things over. So it was all sort of this paper scenario, and they went through the second gate. I think it was even opened. The second gate may have even been opened for the group. And the only reason they got caught at the third gate is they couldn't find the key to the lock. So they had to come around the other side. So, we've seen the films inside where there's one guy, one officer with a baton, and he opens up the elevator or the door, and there's a Q guy there with the black T-shirt and the Q. And the one guy, he drops his baton, and he picks it up, and then he goes one step, and then he goes up another level of steps. He's guiding them where to go for the photo op. And only one policeman, if they really were in fear, with 1 million people, only one policeman would meet them, and he would have a little baton. It just nothing washed about this thing.
Our colleague Wes last night, if I can just slip this in from Wes, was great. I mean, the last interview on my show last night, Wes has a lot of experience in observing, foreign affairs from the vantage point of having been an official American listener in the East German Republic to listen to the German radio, to East German radios, to try to help our side understand what the East Germans were doing. And he's seen these things. And he said right away, he said, you can see what it is, that they all they need to do is have sufficient number of people to inspire the crowd to move forward. And when I saw that clip of there was a gang of them, and between the camera and the crowd, there was at least a dozen Capitol Police officers kind of just standing around. And they just started backing off and letting the crowd come in. And it was like they were all best buddies. They said, well, we're just going to let everybody come in now. And the crowd followed. And while they were doing that, other Capitol Police were inside the dome getting photo ops with protesters that had gone in, and they were like holding the camera and smiling with their protester buddies. And then, after having, led them down the garden path, the next thing you know is they killed that lady. So whose responsibility is it that lady got killed? And I'm talking, and you're a Californian, Daryl, is Nancy Pelosi taking any heat for this? Because I blame her directly.
Not that I can tell. It sounds like another failed screenwriter's script, a bad rejected Hollywood script by someone called Adam Schiff. But neither of them are getting the heat for it because the reality of it was tightly controlled. But I think because of our conversation right now and other independent journalists, and George be interviewing people, I think we have an opportunity to rewrite it, to correct it. I don't think the mainstream account is going to hold.
Yeah.
Just like the Kennedy assassinations didn't hold water. But this is going to happen much more quickly because there were all these people with phones who were there. They were on foot. George, you said that you felt like you were like in the middle of a false flag as it was unfolding.
Yeah. I immediately thought that.
Yeah, so you were a participant observer.
Yeah.
And you can't get any closer than that. So I would say, George, please write one of your books and get it out there.
Yeah, I think your book, the coming book about the occult in Washington and the use of these symbols and so forth in mass psychology and so forth, is very good. And I'm thinking about that right now, where they set off these large cannons, making it sound like Into the Breach. There was sort of you had these guys with microphones and portable speakers and bullhorns. Yelling, forward, and sort of the half-lure speech, with Henry the Fifth kind of things. And it was all to encourage people to go. And we had some people, after the gates had been taken down and they was, being sort of led by the Capitol Police up the steps, they didn't know that there was a barricade there before. Oh. They just naturally filled in, figuring, it's okay, they're accommodating the protests. So I knew the red line. I went to the door where the girl got shot, but I knew the red line was going in because was the trap. And so I stayed outside the trap, but I went right to the red line, and I got there fortunate enough to see the guys coming out who had supposedly been tear gassed. And that's in the film I published today on Twitter, which is, I've had all the videos I took yesterday shut down from YouTube, which is supposed to be this new free speech platform.
Oh, no.
That doesn't sound very free.
It doesn't. And you're right, Doctor. They don't want this story to be told. But this is the lone gunman theory if Oswald had been in New Orleans still. This is so much more far-fetched than the magic bullet theory. This is if Oswald had forgotten to go take the bus. And somehow he, gizmoed a Rube Goldberg machine. He rang the phone and the Carcano went off. And we are going to make short work of this thing.
Oh, we've lost our Skype connection after I bragged on what a great connection we had. Professor, are you still with us? Professor?
I'm still here, yeah. It's just a temporary glitch. Yeah.
Okay, superb. Yeah.
It's just glitching.
Well, the other person that I look to, frankly, and I don't know if people want to hear this or not, but President Trump should take responsibility for this. The buck stops there. He's the president. And if he's, invited millions of people, to take their, spend their savings, come to Washington, take all these risks, and participate in a rally that he sponsored. He said, "We want you to come." Well, wasn't he responsible for keeping these people safe? And should he not have anticipated that Nancy Pelosi would pull something just exactly like this and have had superior force around to prevent what she obviously orchestrated? I mean, it's her Capitol, it's her police, she runs it, and I'm not going to let go of her. I think she needs to fall for this. She's fired the Capitol Police head and the head sergeant of arms of the House, but those people are just following orders. I guarantee you they wouldn't have never stood down if she hadn't said stand down. There's just no way.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seems like those people should be gotten to and interviewed very quickly before they start disappearing, the head of the Capitol Police. And they're probably just angry enough now to share what really went down. It does look like they were told to stand down or given some disinformation by somebody so that they wouldn't put up any sort of a protective barrier against the what looks like peaceful protesters. After all,
yeah, we don't know exactly what happened to Trump's social media, and I think most of that would have been directed by Trump after leaving the speech platform down by the Ellipse. He's kind of out of control talking to the crowd.
Yeah.
And I agree with John. You would think he would be live tweeting the thing or personally leading the thing like he said he was going to do, the march, if he was going up there. You do leave your domain at the White House with the Secret Service when you step onto Pennsylvania Avenue, because you now are in Marion Bowser's domain, and then when you step grounds in the Capitol building, you're now in Nancy Pelosi and Debbie Wasserman Schultz's domain, and Adam Schiff's domain. I believe Doctor, you said it so well. This is a bad for Adam Schiff, this is a bad script. This was really bad. It's like the first Gilligan's Island. If you looked at the,
Flintstone making a cameo with a buffalo head.
yeah, the Buffalo Lodge, right? I mean, when you looked at that cast of characters, it made that Simpson episode with the buffalo head guy look like high art. You know, it made it look like Picasso.
Was there a Simpson episode with a guy with a buffalo head? See, that's another one, because the Simpsons are famous for having these predictive programming for 9/11 and things like that.
Yeah, there was a guy who's taking over the Capitol with the buffalo head. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Doctor. I'm sorry.
No. I think it's really imperative to start interviewing these individuals, especially the ones who are pissed off because they're set up as patsies. I didn't know about them being fired, John. The head of the Capitol Police. They're probably want to really spill their guts about the injustice of it, because I think they were played.
Yeah, we have a lot of Capitol Police here on this island, and also D.C. Police, and
excellent.
You know, and they were all there. I don't know when they're going to be able to talk about it because there's a gag order already. But I do think when you saw the people that, for instance, when they originally went through the gate, there was only one motorcycle cop that came through the crowd. Now, how could that be? How could they have not anticipated when this group was going toward these bicycle barriers? How could they have not anticipated that and had a bullhorn and just said, "Ladies and gentlemen, stop in your tracks. You are trespassing. You will be arrested." None of that occurred. All you heard was the cannons roar, and you saw the flags. It sort of looked like a Civil War charge with the flags streaming in. And you are swept up in this emotion. You feel like, hey, I'm at the big charge at Gettysburg here on Pickett's charge here.
Right.
And it is. I saw it all, and it was very effectively done. And it's sort of the same way generals use these kind of optics to get people who normally don't want to run in front of bullets to do it. And they've worked on this for years, and we fell right into it. I thought of Alexander the Great. First person I thought of is all the fake retreats Alexander the Great did. It's always a trap. Alexander the Great doesn't open the battle. If he opens again with a fake retreat, stay where you are. Don't go all the way in. Mm-hmm. But it worked like a charm. And the media, yeah.
This was tested out in the streets of Seattle with remember the Battle of Seattle a number of years ago, and then Wall Street. It looks like kettling, like a kettling tactics, where they allow people to jump into the pot on their own. They don't really need a lot of people to direct them into a certain confined space, into the trap that they sprung.
Well, kettling is a very good term from it. It comes from the German Nazi military doctrine in World War II, where the idea was that they would send out a pincer of tanks on the left and a pincer of tanks on the right, and they would gradually encircle the people, and then it would be a cauldron. It would be a kettle. I can't remember the German word for it, but that's exactly what they called it, kettling.
Yeah.
You saw a military operation. By the way, the ellipsis started out in the Renaissance period as a military-style fortification. As the age of the grand blocky castles were coming to a close, the geniuses of the Renaissance said, we need a new form of how to fortify our spaces, because this is all about space. This is about zones, like temporary autonomous zones and occupation. Occupy this, occupy Wall Street. And this time they were going to occupy the rotunda, which itself is a geometric roadmap to the occult, right? Mm-hmm. It's all there. It's all there, ready to be decoded, and we don't even need Dan Brown this time around.
Well, it's speaking of decoding, when these things happen, and I suspect a false flag, I always go and look at names that are spelled very similar to the victims and the names that are put out. And this Ashley Babbitt, if you add an E, some women spell their name Ashley with Ash and then L-I-E. And you just carve an E off of the name, you get a woman 33 years old as well, who looks exactly like the victim from Michigan. And she is, I mean, I put the two pictures out there because I didn't know if this was the Ashley, but the victim, the military veteran victim, doesn't look anything like the woman that was on the gurney. Now, I don't know if the woman on the gurney was shot or if the woman, I know the woman from California is dead, but I'm troubled by this because she's not from California, she's not from San Diego, she doesn't have a military background, and she looks exactly like the woman on the gurney. So when I see the person who they say is killed in the Washington Post not look like the person on the gurney, I immediately wonder, are they using some other unfortunate person who is a criminal informant or just an informant? The Oswald thing, where you just say, oh, by the way, when we had you run around to go visit the Russians, that was to set you up to make you look like you did it. But Jack Ruby is about ready to plug you one, and you won't ever have to worry about it again. You just wonder if this wasn't someone who had been lured there in a group. Usually 4 or 5 people work on them, and then they say, we're going to bust the window, and you're the skinny one. You're going to go through first. And that's and then the picture of the gun. Again, there's just one gun that's a pistol, and you only see, somehow they catch that on film, and somehow there's only one person, one police officer. Here's the barbarians at the gate, right? There's that single police officer. It's almost like you cleared the set, so the only thing people could focus on was that one pistol and that one shot. It just, there's a lot of lone gunmen in this thing, and it's just hard to, again, literally, there's one lone gunman that supposedly killed one lone protester.
It's the whole Sirhan again.
That's a good one too.
Yeah, excellent.
Lone gunman, and there's actually a feigned Caesar who's a bodyguard or someone who's doing the actual shooting. But again, we're still looking at the forensic, the photographs and the video. But I was told that this woman was flanked on either side by Capitol Police.
Yes.
She was right between both of them, and so they kind of bracketed her too.
Yeah.
As a target, and she was not in uniform, so she'd be very easy to shoot. I would, especially at that close range.
Yeah, she was sort of dog walked right to the thing, and they both had long guns, and they both had body armor on. So you just wonder, okay, if we are dog walking her to her death, and somebody does have a fragment that goes awry, our eyes are protected, and we're full bodied up on armor, and you just wonder if she wasn't dog walked to her death.
I think we have to consider a third possibility, and with all due respect to the deceased and the families of those that died, whether from a heart attack or otherwise, we also have to consider the idea that it really was all a school play.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you, I've got a makeup kit at my house from my opera singing days, and one of the things you always have in there is a little package of stage blood. And you put it in your pocket, and if somebody shoots you, you smash it, and it bleeds all over the place. Yeah. And and everybody, a number of people have asked me to consider the idea that Stephen Mnuchin might be involved in this because of his history as a producer. If you look Mnuchin up on IMDb, you will find that he has been the producer and other roles in producing a number of major motion pictures. So there's that just to consider. I'm not saying I have any evidence of it, but they can do whatever they want to. If they control the scene, they control the cops, they're the ones with the guns, and they've got the cameras too. So who knows? It probably is a school play, whether, as with Oswald, the person was really murdered, or whether it was an accident, somebody was trigger happy, or for whatever. We don't know. And George, I don't think we're intended to know. I think that's part of the mystical part of this thing, is that, they had this, it was a mystical procedure. I can't think of the name of it, but it seemed, Professor, to be very consistent with your first comments as we started the show. This all seems guaranteed to mystify people, terrorize people, and make them go along with the increased totalitarian state lockdown and surveillance that we are afraid we're going to face if the man from the dark side gets in the White House.
Well, John, it's funny you mentioned that, because immediately they announced they want more money for Capitol security. Immediately they announced putting out the perimeter grader. We had somebody there today at the White House, or at the Capitol building now, where they have big fences now, and you can't get anywhere near the Capitol. Well, if that was the intention, why wouldn't they have had those fences there earlier? I saw a guy go right over where the inauguration ramp is going to be. And see, they made people climb over the inauguration ramp. So it was sort of like an affront, an attack on the whole process of, orderly transition. We're getting rumors tonight from Washington that Trump will release a video where he will have a sort of conciliatory tone, if not concede, but a conciliatory tone, saying, calming the masses. I don't think I think this, John, you hit it on the head. This is one area where Trump lost his common touch, where he let the crowd get away with the provocateurs. And if he would have been able to see the crowd, and some people said it was very difficult to see because they had him behind a big screen. But if he'd been able to see the leakage, he would have said, wait, I'm coming with you, hold on, wait for me. And then I don't know if his Twitter was cut, and that's how he lost touch electronically with everyone. But it definitely seemed like John was saying, there was some kind of rearguard action that had taken Trump out of the picture. Some people are saying it's Mike Pence's chief of staff that burdened Trump with something at that critical moment to take his phone. So he was without the phone, the official phone. We don't know if that's true, but we later heard the chief of staff was locked out, and then they're not on speaking terms anymore. And Pence stopped following Trump on Twitter, and then they froze his account, so he couldn't put out the message that his phone was stolen. And now Zuckerberg has suspended Trump on Facebook for 2 weeks until Biden is announced. So this was all very much a pre-planned, this is going to be the blackout, this is the internet kill switch idea that people have been talking about, only it was the Trump communications kill switch.
That makes sense to me.
Now, what about the use of the emergency broadcasting network? Isn't that still in play?
Well, yeah, the Insurgency Act, but I think you have people at the key points. Now, I know Jeff Prather used to work with Chris Miller over there at the Pentagon, who's got the Joint Chiefs now reporting to him. But the Insurgency Act would, if they went the military route, would in continuity of government type of route, would go through Chris Miller. And we keep depending on these people, keep, last hoping, all these people, and they turn out never to deliver, trust Barr, trust the plan, trust all these folks. And I have been trying to gently encourage Jeff that, no, it's really our turn to, take to the streets with cameras. Not just take to the streets, but take to the streets with cameras. And like you said, Doctor, get the interviews. So,
right.
And
get them fresh. Yeah.
Now can we surprise you a little bit, Doctor, here?
Yeah, I'm up for surprises.
Well, we've got 14 people here with 14 servitors of empire. And we're each playing the John O'Loughlin game of judging a book by its index. You can't judge a book by its cover, but you sure as hell can by its index, is the new John O'Loughlinism, excuse me. So I picked Dulles. because that was the first keyword that I recognized. And you have it in the index, and it's about 7 or 8 times mentioned in this book. I'm just trying to give people an idea of the richness of this book and history here. And also the historiography, telling the real truth rather than the fake stuff. But I'll read the paragraph. It says, okay, Kennedy, after all, listen how appropriate this paragraph is. Kennedy, after all, had fired Allen Dulles in 1961 after the Bay of Pigs fiasco and famously vowed to shred the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter them into the winds. We're on that show right now.
Smash the CIA.
So, yes.
Yeah, so, I mean...
McDuck style.
And here's another, next sentence. This is why I say this book, every sentence is like... Wow, I just want to sit and look at the Potomac for an hour and think about that sentence.
Hey, I got one. Can I just...
Sure.
The one that caught my eye is on the previous page where it says, appropriately enough, the first head of In-Q-Tel was a Chinese-American video game expert named Gilman Louis.
Yeah.
I mean...
The facts in this are great.
We've been talking about, using the deception that theater provides in this entire operation, and that's another example of hiring people not because they're great at foreign policy or experts in history or psychology or how to win a war. No, because they're experts in video games for In-Q-Tel, George. It's a riot.
And In-Q-Tel, of course, comes up with the follow-on to Ollie North's KL-43 encryption device, which is the BlackBerry, In-Q-Tel's first project.
The BlackBerry is there? Oh, wow.
In Waterloo.
This is epic.
And now I'm going to take the previous sentence. I'm going to take the previous sentence, John, because this is so good. It talks about Louis developed a civilian surveillance technology developed in wide use in today's Google Earth. And I happen to know Keyhole. Keyhole was from the Keyhole camera and the Keyhole satellites that the Corona satellites in Bissell launched. And they took that satellite imagery and made it publicly available, and that Keyhole came out. Keyhole is the company that was then purchased later by Google. Again, a direct connection to our story and Richard Bissell. So I'm going to ask everyone in the group here to come up and point out their favorite index, but I thought I would just let John have his shot here. And Doctor, can you remember when you wrote those words?
All these words come back to me. They sound alien.
I've had that same thing happen to me. I wrote that?
Yeah, I know. It's a really weird, alienating experience. But I kind of like it.
It is kind of fun because you remember, you go, oh, yeah. Oh, now I see the foot now. Oh, yeah.
Right.
There's Carol back there. Carol, you ready?
Hey, Carol.
No, she's not ready.
Okay, I'll let John have a shot at it.
Well, so it's just like shooting fish in a barrel. It's so easy. You just pick any sentence. Now, this book right here is one of the most important books on the book train. And you all know about the book train over at Screaming Ospreys, which is my website. And you see the train go by as you watch the website develop. And one of the most important books, and they're all important, but this one here is so key. I had no idea there was so much in this book. And once I started reading it, I just couldn't put it down. Because, here's a Ray Kurzweil reference, right? I just saw his name and I said, wow. The most prominent proponent of this worldview is conceptual genius and creative innovator Ray Kurzweil, who advances a vision of man and machine merging in what he came to call the singularity. Against Kurzweil stands Bill Joy, the chief scientist and co-founder of Sun Microsystems. George might know something about that.
I know, Bill.
who, in his essay, quote, Why the Future Doesn't Need Us, sounded the alarm against the danger to humanity posed by developments in robotics, genetic engineering, and nanotechnology. I'll toss on top of that, and then I'll let you guys respond, but on top of that, I want to talk about dancing robots. You guys saw, probably everybody has seen the robots out there in that display on YouTube where they're bigger than a man. They look completely sophisticated in terms of being able to articulate all the joints and to balance when they jump over this way and that. I mean, this is a completed project of a robot that while he can dance, he can also knock down your door, grab your guns, and get out of town before you can even call the cops. And I want to talk on top of that too. What is with all the dancers in the medical profession? Why do we have all the nurses lining up outside the hospital and doing some kind of line dance? Why do we have these pictures of people dancing? And then Trump was dancing. You know, we had a dancing Trump for the last part of the campaign. After he got his shot or whatever they gave him for his COVID infection, he says, I feel 20 years younger, you know? And then he was out there, you know, doing the dance to the village people, and he looked pretty good. He looked like, hey, this guy's, I'd hire him. You know, he could be in the stage show. But they're kind of, if they're behind that, and I can't imagine that they're not, that they're setting up another, you know, thing of saying, hey, we can make you dance. We can pull your strings. You all are nothing but our puppets now. We've got the technology. We can send, we can make robots dance, we can make presidents dance, and we can tell anybody in any hospital situation we want to get out on the street and start doing a line dance. It's really, really a cult, in my view. And it reminds me also of those at the CERN, when the CERN had the that really occult ceremony with all the workers going out in this long dance and going into the tunnel, that famous tunnel in Switzerland. And I don't know if anybody's ever seen that, but this occult dancing stuff is something I think I wanted to comment on. And I don't know if you have any comments, but it certainly struck me as something worth looking into.
John, I think you have a premise for your book. Just for the occult meaning of popular dance, going from the twist dance fads. The B-52s have a great parody, and 52 Girls or something. They go through all the different teenage dance crazes. I think that's where it starts. You got the Macarena, and most tellingly, you have Gunman style.
Oh,
and the guy who did, his name was Psy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like an
I think he has some, like a St. Vitus puppet master dance. And George talked about the village people. I remember doing the YMCA stuff. And Donald Trump, the reason why he's such a good dancer is because he used to hang out at Studio 54 with Steve Rubell and all the beautiful people.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there was, I think they threw him out for some reason. I can't remember why. It was like, you know,
You didn't do enough cocaine.
Yeah, or something about he wore a suit and tie once.
Yeah, this guy's too straight. Get him out.
Yeah, he got thrown out. But, well,
He's wearing clothes.
I think dancing, and you'll never see me, I think dancing is a way of visually seeing how someone feels. And emotions are hard to sometimes project because actors are talented in that way. And, you know, when you see somebody dancing, you go, oh, he's happy, you know. He feels confident, you know, when you see Trump do the little, you know, salt shaker dance at the end of his speeches with the village people.
Right.
You know, I was at a medical school and I was touring with one of my relatives to try to get them in to different University of California's medical schools. And so one thing I like to do is go to all the cafeterias and just see the medical students where they're sitting and then go interview them. We did this at all the UC schools. We went to Davis, we went to Irvine, we went to UCLA, all these different places. And the one guy who made it, the one white guy, most people were either Asian or black, in all the UC schools. And the one white guy, I went over there and he was older. And he says, you know, I said, how did you get in? You know, he goes, well, I'm Army. And I said, oh, that's great. You know, they're letting a vet in, you know, and getting the thing. And I said, well, what did you know, how did you get here? I mean, what'd you study? He goes, oh, I was a dance major. And, and he did musicals. Broadway musicals. And I said, well, did you have biology or chemistry? Oh, no, they're going to teach me all that. And I'm like, I think Broadway musicals are great. I lived in New York for a while. That's all really great. But I don't want to be looking up when I'm a hair's breadth from death at a dance major. I want somebody who's got anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, you know. I want an A+ student, you know. And that was a real frustration with the UC schools, because no matter how good the pedigree was, no matter how hard the science was on the resume, you weren't getting in unless you played their game. And you were in that system, and you know what I'm talking about.
Well, you know, this fellow here who got in medical school through the back door, he probably got a letter of recommendation from his boyfriend, General Mad Dog Mattis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
What I'm saying? Because the University of California system is run like the U.S. military now. It's all about ephebophilia.
What?
All the way up and down the structure. What?
What's that, ephebophilia?
Ephebophilia, from Greek, the ephebes, the young boys. They're not children. You know, people keep talking about pedophilia, but really these institutions are run on the ephebe system.
Oh, yeah, the ancient Greeks in there.
Right. It's the
rather disturbing culture to us, but it seems to be coming into our culture now.
It's fitting because we're having this discussion about the military, the National Guard, and the Capitol Police. It's run by a bunch of ephebes. They call it the higher sodomy that has been normalized through the whole quote unquote. Well, it was stolen. It was hijacked. The gay revolution and all that was stolen, and it's been replaced by the ephebophilia industrial military complex. So that's what your relative George was facing.
Yeah.
In terms of the UC system, from Janet Napolitano to the chancellor to all her henchmen, they are all ephebophiles.
All right, we've got our first question from the audience. This is Andy DeBala. You probably know him from the Neighborhood News Studio. And I'm going to just go ahead and give him the microphone. And if you want to come behind me or...
Okay. Professor Hamamoto, how you doing?
Pretty good. Good to meet you, Andy. I saw you interviewed with John.
Nice officially to meet you on screen. We just got to... Okay, sorry.
You finish the show.
Is that the Cleveland Baseball Club?
That's the Cleveland Baseball
Cleveland Baseball Club hat there?
Yes, this is the Cleveland Baseball Club. Yeah. I do want to mention the Cleveland Browns just for a quick second. Now that you're bringing Cleveland sports up, go Browns. Beat the Steelers this weekend.
All right, go Browns.
But we just got your book, and we were just skimming through it briefly outside. I'm sure you can see the beautiful fire in the background.
Nice.
But we talk a lot about the paperclip Nazis here on the show, and I really don't notice a lot of Japanese names on the list of scientists that were, I guess, paperclipped when they came over to America. And in Japan, I guess there was kind of like a go down with the ship policy for the higher ups. Do you know any significant type of paperclip Japanese Nazis or whatever you want to call them that came over after World War II? And B, do you think it benefits a society more to have to keep your scientists and keep the knowledge alive and maybe have them taken over by the other countries after a war or a battle? Or do you think it's better for the higher ups and the knowledge to go down with the ship or the battle per se?
Well, so far as the Axis countries, the Japan case, Imperial Japan case, is different. They kept most of their talent at home and just reinstalled them at the University of Tokyo, #1, University of Kyoto. So there wasn't a huge mass migration. They only started coming in like in the 1965 period when all the other people, the older aging out paperclip type people. But it was very interesting that there was a Japanese scientist involved with this recent quote unquote epidemic. I think he was up in Canada.
Okay.
And so they're very much in play. In fact, I mean, even before the war, I forgot the guy's name, but he's on the 1,000 yen bill note in Japanese currency. But he was totally into yellow fever and all these types of researching all these vectors, which are now being held over our heads like a sword of Damocles. So Japanese intellectual talent, even today, is very, very strong. But my contribution is trying to shine a light on the Asian connection, because mostly they're just talking about, Germans and the Nazis. I mean, that's all you read about. So I'll be doing more work there in that area. But I also want to find out people who are native speakers who can read the language and help fill out that picture, because especially in the case of China, that's where a lot of the new weapons, whatever they may be, electronic or bacteriological, or electronic, are going to be coming from. And it's not going to be good for us because we're not really growing our own anymore. George was talking about U.S. California, mostly Asian. Most of those people are immigrants or refugees. So we're not